Good morning and welcome to this special edition of Top of the Morning. Today we'll be talking with two members of the new Black Panther Party from the Seattle-Tacoma chapter, engaging on topics many of you want to know about and much more. You won't want to miss this. Stay tuned. Hello, my name is Chris Anderson. Welcome back to Top of the Morning. Today we're talking with two members of the new Black Panther Party, and they're here to inform us what they're all about and to clear up some misconceptions. Please help me in welcoming our guests, Netriket and Quayo. Guys, thank you so much for taking the time to be on our show this morning.
Thanks for having us.
We know you're very busy. First, let's start with talking about the difference between, there was the well-known Black Panther Party from the 1960s and the new Black Panther Party. Is there a difference, and if so, what is it?
Well, we call ourselves more or less the New Guard, and the original Black Panther Party is the original Black Panther Party. Of course, as you can tell just by the namesake alone, that there's definitely an influence. The major difference is really the generation. So there's different issues that have evolved that is more permanent. So what we do is we take the model of the original Black Panther Party, the things that made them successful. We also look at what was the detriment, whether it was sometimes eternally or externally. And we also modified some of the principles to also include more of a local interaction with the community. So in principle, there really is no difference.
What is it the new Black Panther Party stands for, and what is its purpose nowadays?
Pretty much the same as the original party. We stand for justice, upholding ourselves and upholding our communities with dignity, taking responsibility for things that we can change within our own community.
Have you guys been heavily involved? You hear a lot now. Unfortunately, it just seems to keep happening and almost getting worse. What's going on throughout the country with police, excessive force, brutality.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a relationship with the Black Lives Matter movement?
Organizationally, no, we don't. We don't have any direct ties or any links, nor have we done any official organizing with them. Black Lives Matter, as a hashtag, as a sentiment, is respectable and it's needed. It was birthed out of the necessity of recognizing what is happening disproportionately. As an organization, we don't necessarily see eye to eye on everything, but we're not here to bash any other organizations that are about justice.
What happened to the original Black Panther Party?
Well, as a lot of people know, through the FBI had a program called the Counterintelligence Program. Within that program, some of the goals were to undermine Black nationalist organizations and individuals. It was to cause disruption, cause internal conflict, and it ended actually with we could say an unholy alliance between the FBI and criminal organizations. And with that, they funneled a lot of drugs, namely heroin, into Black communities. So that was kind of the final stamp, along with the murder and illegal arrest and imprisonment of people who are still in prison today, like Mumia Abu-Jamal, and people who are now exiled, like Assata Shakur. So in essence, for some reason that there were elements within the government that felt that for Black people to lift ourselves from our bootstraps, as we're so many times told to do, I guess it was a threat. I remember watching a document with J. Edgar Hoover, and within this document, he actually said that the free breakfast program was a domestic threat, based on the fact that if Black communities realize that we have control to uplift our own communities, that maybe we wouldn't depend on the government, and I guess he saw that as a threat.
Speaking of government and organizations, are there any other organizations that your organization is involved with? Do you guys get involved with other organizations? Do you help out with anything?
Well, if we have the same goals, then yes, we're more than willing to. I mean, in fact, we have worked with Not This Time, which was created by a good brother, named Andre Taylor. And what we did with them, amongst other things, is we helped to get an initiative 940 passed, which is to hold police accountable. And in 49 states, because Washington is the first to actually get something like this passed, in 49 states there's verbiage within the law that allows a police officer to kill an unarmed individual and not have to face any kind of prosecution or be held accountable. And that is because there is a framework, which is not, maybe not verbatim through every state, but it basically alludes to malice intent. So if you can't prove the mind state of the police officer, then they could just say, I feared for my life, even if the person was unarmed, even if the person they killed was only 12 years old, even if it was someone who was just walking back from the store with Skittles, even if it's a woman. So because of that verbiage, they could, police officers that have ill intent can hide behind, I feared for my life. So that's something that now in Washington State has been challenged, and we hope that the rest of the country, takes an example.
What type of work is your organization involved with around the community? Can you give any examples?
Yeah, well, we work with a organization called the Youth Empowerment Solutions Program, which deals with tutoring and mentoring and other things. So we help to distribute educational products, or should I say school supplies, and also to help feed the community through them. Like I said, we work with Not This Time, we work with Tacoma Action Collective, and pretty much any kind of organization that has some of the goals that we have, then we're willing to work with them. So if we have a goal of obtaining justice, accountability, or educating the youth, or entrepreneurial readyship, or conflict resolutions, like we have done with people like Dominique Dawkins from Community Passageway, then that's what we're going to do.
Beyond, sorry, go ahead. Beyond other things that we actually do in the community, between King County and Pierce County here, we've actually maintained a presence at the Emmanuel AME, which is the same church or a sister church to the church that was actually shot up in South Carolina by Dylan Roof. So we've actually been there since that shooting has actually taken place. They have actually been dealing with different threats up there because we have various local hate groups in here in the Western Washington area alone, Skinhead, Klan, you name it, it's around the way. So that is one thing that we also been doing here, is maintaining a presence, aside from the other food drives and clothing drives, and I'll say, gosh, what's the word I'm looking for?
Working with other organizations.
That's what I'm looking for. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so we do things like that. We do political education meetings where we try to get the community involved in the importance of being active in local politics, conflict resolutions with different street organizations. Sometimes we show different documentaries, like we show the 13th, so we can see the correlation between the 13th Amendment, slavery, and the private prison system. These are things that need to be identified. So, those are some of the things that we've been involved in.
What is your organization's main objective?
Our objective is justice for our people. That's what it is. It's justice and restoring the black community to a respectable and dignified position, and to be able to have self-determination and govern what happens in our lives, and without external influence that may not be good for our community. We feel like we can police our own communities. We feel like we can educate our own communities. Mm-hmm. We feel like that, we have the capabilities and the responsibility to take more control of our communities in a positive way. And not only will that affect our communities in a positive way, but it'll also reflect surrounding communities as well.
Are you finding that the Seattle-Tacoma area in general, are you finding a lot of other organizations, a lot of people reaching out to you, wanting your help, wanting your voice involved in their struggles?
You know what? A very interesting point is that most people, when they actually engage with us, they love our presence. They love what we stand for. They love what we're doing, and they do want to assist. The biggest problem is that literally over 95% of what you may hear about the Panthers is not from the Panthers. So they're coming from external sources, sometimes with some certain agenda, sometimes with things that are out of context, and sometimes it's just out of ignorance. So when people think of Black Panthers, they think guns, they think boots, they think people who hate white people who hate cops, when that's not actually what formed neither party. So when we are out in the community, then we always find people, whether they're involved in organizations or whether they individually want to do something for the community, and we haven't really had too much resistance in that regards.
Do you think, in our last minute here before our break, would you say the Seattle-Tacoma area has a big racist problem with racist organizations? Do you see, compared to other parts of the country?
I believe that Washington State, especially Western Washington, does have its fair share. You know, there's a lot of covert racism, from inside. You know, systematic, as Netterket just said. But beyond that, yes, we do have that in-your-face racism. I mean, it wasn't just too long ago where a man was attacked downtown Tacoma near the Pink Elephant, you know, by a skinhead group. You know, so that element exists here.
So you're finding, you obviously find that, and then there's been instances with the police right here in Tacoma and in Seattle.
Yes.
And your organization has probably been very involved in trying to see to it that clears up as well.
Absolutely.
As we're seeing around the country, we don't see it as much here, but a lot of people like to think that obviously Seattle, well, we're liberal, so there aren't any problems, when there really is. All right, well, that will do it for this segment. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, we'll be going more in depth with the Black Panthers. Stay tuned. Welcome back. I'm your host, Chris Anderson. Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of Top of the Morning. With me are two members of the new Black Panthers party, Netterket and Quayo. Guys, again, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to come to our studios and talk to us about your organization. Continuing on with our conversation, is your organization only for African Americans, or is it for other people of color?
Well, I mean, it's pretty plain in the namesake. New Black Panther Party. Membership, yes, is for those of African descent.
Yes, indeed.
You know, we feel like, just like other communities where they have their own exclusive groups, it's not about a hate thing. It's just that for us to hold ourselves accountable, we have to make the executive decisions, and we have to be the ones that understand. We are the ones who understand our problem.
Truly
so even if someone who from the outside community was sincere in joining and helping, there's only so much that they can do without actually being black. So although we do work with other organizations that are multicultural or maybe of a different ethnic group, as far as membership is concerned, it's exclusive.
This is a big one, and it's probably, I don't know, it could be obvious just given what's going on when you see the headlines these days, but is America, in your eyes, a racist nation?
Good question. I mean, I guess to determine that, so I don't think that anyone would say that every individual is racist or practices racism. However, when we look at the construction of the Constitution and of the laws in these countries, in this country, it was actually deliberately built to keep a certain class under another class. So until some of these different laws are taken off the books, and until the behavior of the masses or those who control the politics and media and things like that and corporations change, then we have to say no doubt that there's definitely a racist element in this country. We see it operate every day in the justice system. We see it operate in the way corporations operate. You know, we see it with organizations that are just hell bent and determined just to cause conflict with races that's not their own. So yeah, we've seen it happen in Charlottesville. There's too many examples not to just face the facts. Like, if we really want to be this post-racial America, then we have to actually have these kind of conversations. We have to actually start working towards the actual solutions rather than running from it.
What are some of, let's talk a little bit, what are some of those solutions?
Well, like I said, as a Panther, my core belief and what I do know is that, however, even though there are many things that we cannot control, it's kind of like the parable in the Bible, the Serenity Prayer, give me the wisdom to determine what I can change, what I can't, accept what I can't, but change what I can't. And I believe that if the black community, or as the black community, works on the solutions that we can change, as we work on the different things within our community that we can change, the things we can't change will be less relevant.
When you think about what an American is, what's the first thing you visualize?
Asada Shakur was asked the same question, I believe, but definitely when I hear the word American, I visualize, white male, red cap on forward that says "Make America Great Again." I mean, in all honesty, just about anybody, if you hear the word American, you think of a white family. I don't see myself in the picture. I don't see Latinos in the pictures, and I definitely don't see a Native American in the picture. So that it's just the reality of it.
Do you think for people who aren't, for everybody really who isn't white, do you see any hope for that conception maybe changing?
What do you mean, for the narrative of what?
Of what people would think of an American when they don't just think of a white male.
I mean, I think that's been conditioned though. So like, there's been a certain conditioning since there was a television, since there was any kind of mechanisms of propaganda or media, that has been the model that has not only been internally pushed within the United States, but also been pushed externally. So we know that an American means one who was born on American soil, and it doesn't really denote race. However, the narrative that has been pushed does denote that. So I would personally consider the so-called natives as American. I also know that there were Africans that were actually here before colonization. So by birth, yes, we can say that we're American, but for that narrative to change, it has to be something that is actually done by those who create the narrative.
Let's talk a little bit, if you will, about white privilege. We're hearing a lot about this. What it really seems to be, and if I'm right, tell me if I am, that this is really just unintentional racism. Would you say that, or would you say it is intentional?
That white privilege is unintentional?
Yeah. Some people say it's unintentional. You have people who are, they have that privilege, and then they're unaware that what's going on is actual racism. Or would you say that is nonsense, that it is just flat out racism?
Not being a white person, I don't know. All I could do is surmise what I see. I would say that most white people do know they have a privilege. If you don't, then you're missing out on something. Privilege is manifest when some devilish little kid can walk into, or young man I should say, can walk into a church, kill 9 individuals, not only be apprehended without being shot, but also can be taken to Burger King, and then, as he's in jail, and able to raise $4.2 million. That's white privilege, because someone like myself or someone like Shay Taylor, the deceased brother of a close friend of mine was killed. He did not have a weapon and he was in compliance. That's white privilege.
So similar to what happened down in Sacramento earlier this year, that a young man was reaching for his cell phone and was shot. I think it was 26 times. You'd call that an example of, because maybe if he were white, they wouldn't have even pulled their guns.
Absolutely, and that has something to do with more than just white privilege. It also has to do with the way police officers are trained, and the way that police officers and other people are conditioned. Because at this point, the only time you really see black men, black women on TV is either if they're thugs or if they're rich. So what that means is that there's a conditioning that is being programmed that either you're going to be envious of these people or you're going to be fearful of these people. So that's not a good recipe for, a police officer is subject to the same media that we are. So, if his daily life, he's not interacting with people of color, black people specifically, then that means that he won't understand the cultural nuances in which would allow him to determine a threat from just a kid.
You've mentioned media a few times in our conversation.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the media's role in this. And obviously, we're not just talking about the news media,
right.
What you're seeing in network news, Fox, CNN, whatever.
Yeah.
We're talking about everything, movies,
Yeah.
TV. Is that pretty? What's your take on that whole thing?
Well, I mean, I think there's too much personal narrative, bipartisanism, agenda. I mean, when you have a media that is totally sponsored or mostly sponsored by corporations, and that means the corporations are calling the shots of what's pushed. So that means they're trying to sell products, and then also there's also an agenda by some to show people in a certain light. So, if there was a more comprehensive and holistic view of what's going on, and if more independent media networks were able to actually show the truth and not trying to make someone believe as they believe, but just show the facts for what it is. And people are intelligent enough to come to their own conclusions. So, yeah, I think that because of media, whether it's print media, whether it's movies, whether it's even music, things of that nature, it's able to steer people to think a certain kind of way.
Excellent. All right, well, when we come back, a few closing comments. Back to top of the morning. I'd like to thank our guests from the new Black Panther Party for being here on the show today. We have enjoyed talking to Neterket and Quayo. Thank you for joining us today. If you would like more information about this program or the Bates Broadcasting Video Production Program, please contact Bates Technical College online. And if you have an idea for Top of the Morning, be sure to contact us and let us know, and we will be happy to consider it. This has been Top of the Morning. I'm your host, Chris Anderson. Thank you for joining us.